thank you for coming on the show today, mate. Obviously, I've watched your journey from afar the last several years, and definitely have been super impressed with what you've, I guess, been able to do individually as a business person, but then also as a father. I'm a family man myself. I've got 6 kids.
Oh my gosh, 6! How do you do it?
And how do I look? And how do I stay looking so young too? Right?
My gosh,
the 6 kids and my wife and I were CEO of our own separate companies, so I know what it's like to juggle the kind of entrepreneurial wife and husband duo with the kids. Which is one of the reasons why I want to get you on. One of the reasons why I want to get you on the show.
I love it, dude. I love it.
So look, let's just jump straight into it, mate. I mean, obviously, for the person out there that doesn't know anything about you, tell us a little bit about you and your career. How you went from, I guess, being in debt and kind of living week to week to becoming a multi-millionaire within your own right over the space of a few years in your 30s.
Well, I mean, the whole journey happened over 11 years that I've been with Grant. I mean, one of the mistakes that people make and they get kind of caught into is they look at people like where they're at, and they think that people are born like that, or that everybody's supposed to be like that, and then they start comparing to themselves. And there was 11 years that went into getting where I'm at today, and that was sleeping on an air mattress and not having any money and working 6 days a week, insane hours, just trying to figure it out and trying to figure out how to make money. So there is no such thing as an overnight success. It's getting a plan and developing the 3 things. You got to develop the right mindset, you have to develop the right skill set, and then you have to develop discipline to actually continue to execute. Because where most people fall off is right when they start experiencing a tiny bit of success and they don't have the discipline to continue with the development of their mindset and their skill set. And so they get capped and they don't go further in life. And so when you're just around great people who continue to push and reach for the next thing and encourage you to play a bigger game and hold you accountable to your potential, then, great things can happen.
Well, it's habits and behaviors, I think, to your point, right? It's like doing the same thing every day. It's almost monotonous in nature. And I was actually speaking with a good friend of mine the other day about this. And we're talking about that very same thing, where people kind of look at where you're at now, i.e. the goal that you might have had 10 years ago. But they haven't seen behind the scenes. They haven't seen the 15, 16, 18-hour days. They haven't seen the sleepless nights. They haven't seen getting up at 3 a.m. to get to a 4 a.m. meeting because it's with a person, internationally or whatever that might be. They haven't been part of that journey. So I think that's a big testament to that. I guess, obviously, doing that and, I guess really hustling and approaching everything with maximum action over the last decade in particular. How have you been able to kind of blend that in with being a family man? I think that's one of the secret sauce that a lot of people look at. It's like, okay, it's all well and good to be, financially successful, but how have you become, I guess, emotionally and, successful from a family standpoint?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't say that, what I can say is if I wouldn't, as I look back, if I would have been, I started working for Grant when I was 26 years old.
Yep.
So if I would have been married and had a kid at 26 and not single, things would probably be different. I probably, I could say one of 2 things would happen. Either one, I would have sacrificed 3 or 4 or 5 years of time with kids to get to where I'm at, because it does take some sacrifice, particularly in the beginning. Or I would have probably reached a diminished level of success. I mean, I don't think, I don't think you can say that, if I was working 6 days a week and leaving for the office at 6 o'clock in the morning and coming home at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night, I mean, you don't see your kids if you do that. So I
did that. I did that in my first marriage. That's why I'm on to number 2. So I can relate. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think you know, when I always tell people when they're in their 20s and coming into their early 30s, like, don't be in a rush to have a kid or have children if you don't have the time to be a parent.
Yeah. And I mean, and you know, like for me, it was, fortunately, fortunately, I didn't make a mistake and get a girl pregnant or anything.
Yeah.
But you know, for me, I knew that I didn't want to get married and I didn't want to start thinking about that until I had my shit together. And so for me, that was like, I knew when I was ready to like look for the girl. Until that point, it was just looking for a girl, you know?
Yeah.
And then it was like when I had gotten to a place now where I'm like, okay, I'm proud of who I am as a man and the type of husband that I could be and the type of father that I could be. Like, I'm finally getting to a place where I could do that. So now I want to look for the girl. And fortunately I found her, and, you know, now we have a beautiful family, and, you know, I still work a lot, but, you know, like the time that I spend with my kids, like I really do value that it's at the high end of the list, you know, like that 10x, this whole 10x thing. It's not just about having money or having a big business. 10x is about having everything. It's about having it all. And I think some people get a little misguided by, you know, it just means make money and you
I
know,
agree.
jet and all this stuff. Like, Grant's family is very important to him, and he spends a lot of time with his kids. And he's been able to, you know, if you're an entrepreneur, you have a little bit more flexibility in how you can work your day and your schedule. If you're an employee like I am, you have less of that. But, you know, you make modifications. You say, we're going to put everybody to bed an hour earlier, and we're going to wake up an hour earlier. So we have time, an extra hour in the morning, you know, like when through my week, I have, you know, maybe an hour or so in the morning total with the kids, and then maybe an hour at night. If I can slide away for lunch and come home for lunch, I'll do that every now and then. And then I have the weekends. And so that's just kind of like, make the time that you have count, and be present, you know, like, and that's something that I am working on actively. My wife is amazing at making sure that she reminds me to like unplug.
I think for most men that are wired kind of with that success mindset, it's a constant battle of trying to be present in the moment. You know, but I think coming back to your point then, it's like, I think, you know, what you gave then was, you know, sound advice, because I think a lot of people, like I made the mistake of thinking, okay, well, like I'm in my late 20s now, I probably should get married and start having a family, you know, based off what society deems is, you know, appropriate. And I made the mistake of, I guess, being in a relationship when I wasn't ready. You know, I wasn't ready, and the person that I attracted, you know, that whole law of attraction aspect of things, the person I attracted into my life wasn't the right person that was going to partner up with me to really create this, you know, amazing life that I've worked on creating. So it sounds like you've gone through the same kind of experience, just in a different way.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like I knew, like I dated a few girls, you know, but it was literally like I got to a point where it was, you know, I'd never really saw a girl more than 2 or 3 times before I was on to the next one, because I think intentionally it wasn't a unconscious decision. It was a conscious decision, knowing that the further along I get in this, the more of an obligation I'm going to have to this. And this is, you know, this may, however it sounds, it is the truth. Like, you know, like there's a
100%.
point in life where you're like, hey, like I'm not even interested in anything more than, you know, seeing you once or twice and then moving on, because I've got to get my thing together. And so, you know, for me, again, fortunately, I didn't get into a relationship or a marriage. Like I actually broke up with a girl who was an awesome girl, because I just wasn't in the right place. And I knew that when you're not in the right place personally, and then you change as a person, it's not fair to bring somebody along for that ride, knowing that on the other end, you could end up in 2 different places. And so fortunately, my wife and I were very aligned on what we wanted to do and what we wanted to accomplish when we got together. And, you know, it's been, you know, amazing. Like it's been surprisingly easy. And, like we don't fight, and, we don't bicker, like she's very strong-willed, and I'm pretty easygoing and mellow. So sometimes I just let her do her thing, and because I'm mellow, I can just kind of be like, yeah, okay, that's cool. All right, I'm with you. I agree. I understand, and so it works. And, the kids is probably the hardest thing to add in.
Oh, definitely.
So because you have, fortunately my wife is on the same page with the work that I do, and understanding that, that means that you have to, birthdays sometimes don't get celebrated on birthdays, and holidays don't get celebrated on holidays. And, she's totally cool with that. When you add kids in there, and then, kids are having their attitude and their issues, and then you're putting a lot of attention on kids, and then you got to think about, your relationship. I think that was the big one to figure out, was just like, okay, we have to be present as parents, then we have to be professionals, because my wife has her own business as well. And then how we continue to have a relationship that is exciting and adventurous and passionate and loving. And so it's, it's, again, you're just adding layers of complexity on the life, and just trying to figure it all out and wrap it all up with 10X, and knowing, hey, I want everything to be 10X. I want my relation to be 10X. I want my kids. I want to be a 10X parent. I want to be a 10X business person. I want to be a 10X friend. Like, it's a lot, but it gets you to perform at a higher level in all areas.
So what I've taken away from that, and I think a lot of the listeners would, is it sounds like even from your 20s, like, you made a conscious decision. You were very clear on what you wanted, and you were very self-aware. It sounds like there's been a lot of like transparency in terms of like, communicating with your wife, being on the same page, being very open and honest with, what your thoughts are, what your values are, etc. Like for other people out there that are trying to, 10X their life and create this amazing, ecosystem, like what would your advice be to them in terms of helping them get clarity? Because, like someone like yourself, you've obviously achieved a great level of success, and obviously, Jenny, with success comes a lot of clarity, but a lot of people don't have that. I know.
Yeah, I actually think that clarity of the target is what allowed me to become successful. And so, like, I didn't get clear when I became successful. I got clear, and then I became successful. So it's most people lack clarity on what they really want. And I think that it's one of the biggest detriments, the biggest travesties in life, is people never really spend the time to think and figure out like what they want their life to look like when they're 50 or 55 or 60 or wherever. And so when I was single, I had a lot of time to think, I wasn't going out a whole lot, and I had a lot of time to think about what I wanted my life to look like, and the circumstances under which that could be a possibility, whether it's a money target or a travel target or whatever. It's just this ideal life that I wanted to live. And I went through and I figured out how much about that would cost to live a lifestyle like that, like very specific, like very granular, like spent maybe a week on this whole project of coming up with everything that I wanted, researching online, finding a house, putting together how much the mortgage would be approximately. I'd need 2 cars there. Like, I got so detailed in putting all this together. I would literally fill legal pads up with all of this. And then, doing the math and going, okay, well, if my ideal life is going to cost me, $750,000 a year to live, including all my expenses and, everything, that then somehow I need to come up with a way to make 750 grand a year without working, because in an ideal life, maybe the work that I want to do changes. And so I think that another weird thing about that is going through, I think some people, maybe I'm just talking about myself, but in my ideal life, I don't see me working, but I don't see that being reality. Like I don't think I'll ever be, I think I want to get to a point where, work becomes something. I mean, I wouldn't have to work right now. Like if I changed my lifestyle and we moved, like I wouldn't have to work right now. anymore. But you know, like, I think people always go through, man, like, I want to get to a place where I don't have to work anymore. But I think that, like, when I've had some time to, like, be, like, even during COVID, like, being at home and, like, even though we're working, the business, the world is just a different place and you're at home all the time. I'm like, man, I have to work. Like, I have to have something that I'm chasing. I have to have a target that I'm going after. So it's just an interesting thing. And I think that most people don't spend enough time in that whole ideation of their life. And because they never do that, they never get excited enough about anything to take a risk big enough to put them into a situation where they can not just have an ordinary life, but an extraordinary life.
Although it's so funny you say that, you know, I've undergone similar processes myself, you know, intrinsically, same kind of thing, just differently. And I agree. Like, if you don't have a target down to the dollar on what you want to achieve in life, you know, this is the thought, this is the goal. How are you going to create the strategy to get there? And obviously that's something that you've been doing, which kind of leads me into, like, how did you end up working with Grant? You've obviously worked your way up through the ranks to become, you know, the President of Cardone Enterprises, which is, you know, the world's largest kind of educator of, you know, financial mastery and wealth creation, and in many respects, life creation. I think you touched base on before, the 10X across everything. You know, initially for me as well as a consumer, before I signed up with some of Grant's stuff and did some study with him, it felt more like it was about the money side of things. But getting into it, I realized these are philosophies that I can literally take to my health, my mental fitness, my relationships. Like, how did you end up there?
My dad sent me a YouTube link back when Grant had he had 22 videos, 23 videos or something like that on YouTube. I remember, because I watched all of them and I was like, where can I watch more of this guy's stuff? And I couldn't find it anywhere. And I just said, I'm going to go try to work for him. And so I started calling the office every day. There was probably 4 employees at the time. And that was kind of where everything started. Literally called the office every day for a month and a half to get an interview. And then finally got the call on a Sunday, actually. And so I drove from San Diego to Los Angeles for a job interview.
That was probably deliberate.
Yeah. And then ended up getting the job. And then, you know, along the way, it's just, you know, like, I've always, I don't know, maybe just the way I look at things, I've always maybe looked at things from the eyes of, you know, if this were mine, how would I want it handled, kind of thing. So even though I've been an employee, you know, most of my life, it's weird to call me an employee, but that's what I am. You know, I've always operated as if it was my own. You know, how would I want this phone call to happen if it were my company? How would I want people to be treated if it were my company? How would I create the product if it were my company? And so, and Grant gives me the ability to really, you know, create on that. And I think that's why it's worked so well, is because, you know, I had the eyes of the owner, of an owner, even though I was a sales guy. And I think that finding out that next thing, I created the role for myself. I wasn't given the role, you know, because I just kept reaching. And, you know, truth be told, like, I'm doing the same thing today as I was 7 or 8 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
Company's just bigger. So, you know, and I'm making less phone calls. I'm not making sales calls every day. I'm just doing different.
How many employees does Cardone Enterprises have now?
Across all 4 companies, just about 800.
Wow.
In this business, we have about 180.
Yep. So, I mean, talk to me then, like, when I hear your story, it's kind of in a different context, almost like a Tim Cook, you know, the CEO of Apple. It's not his business, but he's worked his way up over the last 20 years to become the first non-billionaire founder, right? Now, in your case, it's not, I mean, it's common, but it's not overly common, really, actually, in context of people working their way up through the ranks to become multi-millionaires within their own right, working within an organization. Like, to anyone out there right now that's working within a business that maybe doesn't want to go out and take absolute risk, right, and do the whole entrepreneurial thing, but still wants to create wealth and freedom within their life, what would be 2 or 3 tips you could give them in terms of providing value within an organization? Because obviously you've been able to do that. Yeah.
This is a great question, and there I'm going to create something specifically around what you're talking about right now.
Okay.
Which really the question is, how do you get rich if you don't own your own business?
Pretty much.
And so
yeah.
the answer is, number one, you have to become exceptional. And if you're not exceptional right now, you have to have a commitment to becoming exceptional. That's where it starts. You have to start thinking differently. You have to develop yourself differently. Nobody's going to see immense value in you if you're not a valuable person and if you don't contribute. And so the first thing you have to do is work on yourself. Second, like I said, is you have to look for opportunities. Third is you have to be in the right vehicle. Like you have to be in a company of a certain size. If it's too big, you'll get lost and it's going to take forever for you to do anything. Too small and you run the risk of the company going out of business. So you're really looking for a business that's doing, probably $2 to $4 million a year in revenue, that's been around for, at least 5 years, 3, 4, 5 years, so that it's not, they're not a fluke. Ideally, it would be somebody that's over 5 years, 10 years, maybe. Hopefully that they've been through some type of economic cycle and they've made it through. So the idea is proven to be viable.
Battle tested.
Yeah, but because what happens is when you can contribute to the growth of companies like that, you're in a position where you can actually remove the owner from the day-to-day and you can accept responsibility. And almost any owner of any business, if they could become obsolete, they will give up phantom equity or whatever in their company. If I said, hey, look, I don't need you for anything except for this, and this, it's going to take you, 2 hours a week. But I want 10%, 15%, 20% phantom equity in the company. Would you do the deal? It could be 50%, so it really is a matter of having the right vehicle and then continuing to be exceptional as that vehicle grows. And so that establishes your primary income. Then while that is growing, you have to start investing. And so for me, I've been with Grant for 11 years. I've been investing with him for 9 years. I've got almost $4 million invested with him into the real estate funds. So that I'm getting up to almost 20K a month in passive income. So and those investments continue to grow. And as I continue to help grow the company and I continue to make more money, then I continue to put more money in the investments. And, the concept that is so exciting for me is this idea of like the wealth flywheel. Once a flywheel gets moving, it uses its centrifugal force to continue motion, right?
Momentum.
Yeah. And so, if you can imagine a scenario where, let's just say in my ideal life, it's $750,000 a year of expense. Well, if I were to set a target to do 1.5 million a year in passive income, then I would have my 750 for my primary expenses in my ideal life. But then I'd also have an additional 750 to continue to invest and reinvest, and that will continue to grow. So I feel like, some people say that the definition of financial freedom is when your passive income exceeds your expenses. I think true financial freedom comes when you can create that flywheel and you can create a passive income that supplies and fulfills your ideal life. And then on top of that, it continues to fund investment. And that's when you create something that, is really tough to destroy unless you're,
Well, it's turnkey. It's turnkey, right? Like it's that perpetual, perpetual motion. Yeah. No, look, that's a great answer. And I think like as a founder myself, I've only ever worked for myself for the last 20 years. And having, multiple people work for me over the years, definitely the ones that have been with me the longest. Like I'm in a position now where I'm removed from my business on a day-to-day because I've got that within my business. And I can tell you right now, like as a business owner, when you find that and you've got the right person that has those attributes that you spoke about, like you want to reward that.
Yeah, and the thing is not, you don't just want to reward them with something that's temporary.
Exactly.
Like,
You want
you
them to
have
come on the journey with you.
And they have to see that, and they have to be, and it has to be significant enough that they don't go, because another path would be, I come to work for you, I do all these things, I become exceptional, I help you grow your company, and then I go, okay, well, now I grew his company without any risk, and I know all the mistakes to avoid, and I got to learn on Daine's dime, and now I'm going to go out and do it on my own.
I've
And
had
so
that happen.
yeah, but you want to have
Yeah.
you want to have a big enough hook and win in them.
Yeah.
Like I got a lot of chips on the table right now. Like, I'm not walking away. Like, I make a lot of money, and there's even more potential and more opportunity in the next coming years. So, like, I'm not going anywhere. And so you have to think with that. Like, you never want to have the right person go somewhere simply because you didn't want to pay them more. Not that you couldn't pay them more, you just didn't want to, or you didn't have the right comp structure, or worse, you never have the conversation with them about it, and they end up leaving, and it would have been something that you would have done.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the ultimate, that's like the worst case scenario,
I've made that mistake before. It's too many assumptions. But actually, on that point, like, I noticed on your Instagram the other day that you're currently actively recruiting 150 salespeople. So obviously, being that heavily involved in recruitment of salespeople, like, what do you think makes someone good at sales? Like, what type of people are you looking for? Yeah.
Good training. Great salespeople are worth less to me than somebody who comes in that has the ability to learn. Like, great salespeople typically have traits or attributes about them that are hard to replicate, and that's not scalable. Like We've had superstar salespeople, but we literally tell people, we're like, don't do what they do. Like, most people are not going to be able to do that. It's unnatural. It's some creative, weird gift that they have. It's some game that they play. The most important thing is you have a process that is replicatable and duplicatable. It's better to have a team of 8s that all do the same thing than a team of 3 10s and 12 6s. You'll win in the long game. The problem with salespeople that are naturally gifted, top performers, and they break all the rules and they still do more business than anybody else, is you end up being held prisoner to them because you're afraid to get rid of them because they produce so much. And so you never want to be in that position as a business owner or as an executive. And so the most important thing that you can have is a process that people can come in, and within a short period of time, they can learn, they can be trained, and then they can produce and make a paycheck.
I can attest to that. We've sent a bunch of our sales staff to your guys' courses for this very reason. Yeah. Because when you hire outliers, and that's what they are, they're the outliers with high EQ. Yeah. There is no manual for what they do. Mm-hmm. You can't train that, because there are that 5% of the people out there in sales or in life in general that just do what they do, and you can't really put your finger on how they do it. And that's fine, they're outliers. But I think fundamental training and processes is what helps you build scalable sales teams that can actually long-term, scale your business. Because at the end of the day, without revenue, there is no business. So it's a critical thing. I want to, flip the gear a little bit, because I know you've got to go soon, and kind of, for anyone out there that's kind of thinking of starting their own business, and really wanting to kind of 10x their life, coming into 2022, what would be 2 or 3 kind of, bits of wisdom that you would impart, and that you've seen, I guess, because you guys have dealt with millions of students now? Like, what are some of the common, I guess, parameters that these people are doing, or within their business and life, to kind of achieve their levels of success?
I think that being able to take instruction and direction and execute on it is a very valuable skill. And really, before that, is be willing to invest in resources and skill sets. Business is not a new thing. There's millions of people that have come before you that have been successful with it. The best way to the shortcut is to buy it and invest in mentors, invest in coaches, people that have a proven track record. Do your research on people. So the first element is be willing to invest in yourself and invest in coaches and people that have been there before. The second thing is take instruction and execute on it and actually put the material to work. We're in the training business. People come to our programs and courses. I don't know, 80% of them probably don't do anything. That could be a little pessimistic. They're 80%.
But I get what you're saying. I get what
you know what I'm saying. Like they'll take a bit and a piece, but they won't fully entrench themselves in it and make it work. And
they don't go all in.
They don't exactly. And so then they end up with kind of subpar results. So the people who really take something and who get obsessed about it, they're always the ones that win big. And because they're unreasonable and they don't think with reason or logic or excuses or reasons, they just bite onto something and they chew it till all the way to the bone. And those people, the people who continue to come to our events, the people who I see regularly, constantly investing in themselves without getting too many messages, they're not seminar junkies. They're not just jumping around, going to every event and every seminar, because they want to feel inspired. They come, they take information, and, I see people leave, but I continue to see them do well. They'll come to our events for 2 or 3 years. They know the word tracks, they know the scripts, they know and then they don't come to the boot camp anymore, except when they're bringing their team or whatever. But now they're going on to Cardone Ventures, and now they're with Cardone Ventures and Brandon and his team, and they're learning more about operations of the business and strategy of how to grow the business. And then they're partnering with us. So their journey just continues. And that's part of the reason why we have our ecosystem set up the way that we do, is so that people can grow within the ecosystem and not just come to Cardone University, come to the boot camp, come to GrowthCon, and then think, okay, well, I've done that, and then move on. So, a couple different answers thrown at you there, but.
Oh, look, I think, what you guys do is truly unique, in terms of that ecosystem and kind of the scalability, for someone that is just starting out and learning from you guys 2-3 years to being able to kind of invest and partner with you guys and kind of share the love. I think it's admirable, and it's a shame there's not more businesses and people out there doing it.
Yeah. No kidding. Yeah. Well, we're doing God's work.
Yeah. So with that in mind, and to wrap things up, what is in store for you, Jarrod, and also Cardone Enterprises heading into 2022?
We have a lot of stuff in 2022 coming up, but I think we just need to get serious and take this company public and then help a bunch more businesses and then sell the company for a bunch of money and run towards that ideal life. Yep.
Awesome, mate. Well, look, again, thank you very much, mate, for jumping on board today. I know you would be extremely busy working at the heart of the 10X empire, and being around Grant all the time. So again, thank you for coming on today, mate. There was definitely some gems out there for our listeners, and we'll be in touch.
My pleasure. Take care, man. Appreciate your time.
No worries, mate. Likewise, champ. Talk soon, mate.
All right. Bye.
Bye, mate.